Welcome to Dateline Schools, a presentation of the St. Clair County Regional Educational Service Agency, with your host, Terry Harrington.
Welcome to Dateline Schools. In this edition of Dateline Schools, we're going to focus on an issue that many people would rather not talk about, but it's really an issue that's becoming a greater problem in our society and especially in our schools. So what am I referring to? It's commonly called bullying. And to shed some light on this important topic, my guest on this edition of Dateline Schools is behavior specialist Joe Zima from St. Clair County RESA. But before we begin our conversation with Joe, let's tune in to this education update.
Thanks, Terry. Flu season is upon us, and the St. Clair County Health Department wants parents and students to be prepared. It is recommended that everyone 6 months of age or older should get vaccinated. The Health Department is providing flu shots on a walk-in basis on Mondays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Wednesdays from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Other days are appointment only. For more information on getting your flu vaccination, you can contact the Health Department at 810-987-5729 or go to the RESA website at SCCCRESA.org. Last month, Woodland was approved for a grant of $2,500 for the 2011-2012 school year from the Special Olympics Michigan Project Unified. Instructor Jen Egan spearheaded the grant application process, successfully securing funding that will provide the means for the Woodland students to participate in sporting events and recreational activities with traditional high school students. The grant calls for Woodland to host an inclusive sports activity as well as to form a youth activation committee consisting of 6 of our students without intellectual disabilities. The teaching assistants at Woodland will join our students for a unified basketball and bowling tournament at Western Michigan University in March. Some of them will also serve on our youth activation committee, which will meet bi-weekly. St. Clair County has seen a 57% increase in the number of students receiving federal Pell Grants between 2008 and 2010, something educators say is an indicator that efforts to increase the number of county students attending college are having impact. The St. Clair County RESA joined with a number of community partners in 2008 and 2009 to establish a county-wide Know How to Go network. This initiative focuses on encouraging young people to attend college, providing parents and students with information designed to help them choose a school, complete application forms, apply for financial aid, and relate topics. Fall is a perfect time to visit the Pine River Nature Center. This month, the Nature Center will be holding their Build-A-Bat House workshop on November 19th. Other bat-themed activities will be held on November 19th as well. The Nature Center is on Castor Road next to the Goodos County Park and is operated by the St. Clair County RESA. For more information about these offerings at the Nature Center is available by going to the RESA website. And finally, there are only a few more weeks until the holiday break for St. Clair County schools. Christmas break this year begins on December 20th and ends on January 3rd. That is it for Education Update. I'm Christian McGeechee. Terry Harrington and Dateline Schools will return in a moment.
I'm lucky. Let me help you with that. I get to do something I love. It has nothing to do with touchdowns or titles.
Everybody bring it in.
I get to play a part in the life of someone just starting out.
How many of you think homework is just as important as teamwork?
I help keep kids in school.
Good.
And that's the name of the game.
My name is LaDainian Thomason. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United.
Welcome home, man.
Welcome back to Dateline Schools. On this program, we're talking about a subject that really makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it really has a big impact, especially on our children, and the topic is bullying. And to tell us a little bit more about it, my special guest from St. Clair County RESA is Joe Zima, and he's a behavioral specialist. And Joe, just explain a little bit, what does a behavioral specialist do?
Sure. We really look at two things. One, we can work with any of the school buildings here in St. Clair County in terms of creating behavior support plans, doing any type of behavioral functional assessments with some of our students that may have higher needs in the classroom to be successful. So we can help teams look at that process and what we can put in place for those kids to be successful. And then the other half of what I do here is a lot of training, a lot of capacity building with our local schools in terms of classroom management and psychology related topics such as bullying, student success, student motivation, things along those lines.
So what do you find in terms of bullying in our schools in your travels that you see?
What I see is a lot of schools just starting to kind of broach the subject, talk about bullying, curious about how they approach it. Of course, this has been a bigger topic more and more year after year in the legislature. There's been a lot of initiatives and bills pushed through both the House and the Senate in terms of creating that anti-bullying legislation. So I think as we hear more and more about the topic, schools are curious how they can become involved and really be proactive in terms of preventing bullying within their buildings.
Well, bullying's really been around probably as long as there have been kids and kids on the playground type of thing, but it's really taken a pretty serious note of late too, hasn't it?
I really think bullying's always played a serious role. I think what we're seeing in a larger societal sense in the last 50 years is we've really developed in terms of our behavioral research and our psychology research in terms of being able to identify risk factors for kids that are anxious or depressed or even suicidal. I think we're learning more and more based on our current research why bullying is such an issue for our schools and for our students, and I really think it's our responsibility to act on that most current research and look at preventing a lot of those tragedies that do occur because of bullying.
What are some of the results of bullying? What are the reactions and things? Because you know, sometimes when kids are on the playground, they play on each other. You can just avoid them. You didn't have to worry about it. But I think there's a lot more to it today, isn't there?
I think you could look at any number of effects that take place because of bullying. Some that come to mind, of course, are physical injury. Bullying can often involve physical assaults or threats. We often see students that have been bullying have higher rates of anxious and depressive symptoms. Students that are bullied often have lower grade point averages, lower attendance rates in school. We see a lot of absenteeism because of the bullying topic. There's a lot of financial risk for school districts in failing to not only prevent but address bullying once it is recognized within their districts. There's any number of risk factors that may occur because of this particular behavior.
So this is really a society issue that is really systemic in terms of the victim, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think we're just starting to kind of broach the subject in terms of our schools and our communities and in our mental health agencies, but I really do think it's a subject that all areas within our communities need to be addressing in order to support, along with our families and parents that are involved as well.
And I know our kids today are growing up in a technology-based world, more so than you and I did, of course. Does that help to make bullying more of an issue because now you can kind of do it anonymously, where in the past it was pretty much face-to-face or he said, she said type of thing?
It is, when we look at what we would call cyberbullying, or the use of technology, computers, social media websites, cell phones, through texting. Bullying is a couple of things. It's much more accessible. Typically in the past, before we had this explosion of technology in the last 10, 15 years, bullying was something that we would see in our schoolyards or in our classrooms or in the hallways of our buildings. But through the use of social media and being online, a bully is able to create those harmful effects 24/7, and often with that feeling of anonymity, being able to get away with it, that no one's going to find me. And the last thing I would say too is the number of people that can be exposed to that online bullying or that cyberbullying. You could have a message sent and reviewed by potentially thousands of individuals within a very short period of time.
Almost creating a mob mentality type of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we do see that a lot with bullying and with cyberbullying, and that idea, that mob mentality, or kind of following the leader, being afraid to stand out against a greater number of people. If we have 3, 4, 5 individuals participating in that, the snowball effects of that can be tremendous.
Do you find with this topic that age makes a difference or doesn't really make a difference? You've seen it all across the K-12 spectrum? We
do see bullying K through 12. The different forms or the different types that it may take, depending on the age level, does vary. We tend to see more cyberbullying with the middle and especially high school crowd. That may be due to their accessibility to the technology, being online. But then again, I don't know what that holds in terms of the future in 5 to 10 years, as younger and younger students are kind of normalized to the technology that we've been exposed to as they grow up with it and have access to it. I don't know if we'll see an increase. I mean, that's one possibility. But we do see bullying K through 12.
I know the media has really exposed, especially some severe cases, especially when a student has taken their own life. And we've seen several around the country the last couple of years. Do you think that has helped create awareness or help to maybe make it more of an acceptable practice type of thing?
I think it has created a lot of awareness. One of the cases that comes to mind for me is the case of Megan Mears, and she was a 14-year-old student. Megan, I believe this was from Missouri actually. A classmate of Megan's and her mother actually helped to create a fake online account under the name Josh Evans, and this is actually a MySpace account. This was a couple years ago before Facebook got as big as it did right now. But they created this persona of Josh Evans, and then Josh contacted Megan, befriended her, and it wasn't too long before they were almost like a boyfriend-girlfriend type relationship online. But Josh Evans wasn't a real person. This was an image that was created, and these were messages being sent by her classmates and her classmates' mom. Towards the end of that case, Josh Evans broke up with Megan online, actually said the world would be better off without you. And was not shortly after that last post that Megan ended up hanging herself in her closet. So they found Megan dead shortly after that post was made by her classmate and that classmate's mother. Criminal charges were sought and brought against the family for that. But that's one of our cases that are really lending a lot of awareness to not only the risk factors in bullying, but also the detrimental effects of cyberbullying as well. Great.
Let's talk a little bit about the effect of bullying on the victim. Is there differences do you see in the experiences between boys and girls, or is it pretty much meshing now?
Again, just like we would with some of the age groups, I think you tend to see, at least the research will point out that we tend to see a difference between the way that boys bully versus the way that girls do bully. Girls tend to use a lot more of what they call RA, or relational aggression, a lot more deliberate excluding, spreading rumors, beginning lies, a lot more of an emotional type bullying, versus boys tend to see more the physical aggression and the hands-on, the pushing, the kicking, more the physical threats and assaultive type behavior.
Okay. How do you work with school staffs to help them identify possible bullying within their halls?
One of the first things that we do, and one of the high schools that I've been working with recently, both Ron Miller and Alicia Shagney at St. Clair High School, one of the first steps we would take in creating an anti-bullying problem is what we would call normalizing bullying, really creating a culture where we're talking about bullying on a regular basis, we're creating awareness, and it's really the adult's responsibility to make our buildings a safe place. Safe in terms of where kids can actually talk to adults and access adults if they need help with things such as bullying. So there's some specific steps that St. Clair High School is taking to to create that anti-bullying program within their building.
Do you find most school staffs are receptive to doing some things to help counteract potential bullying in the building?
What I found, and especially at St. Clair High School, the message was we really want to create this program, we want to develop this awareness, we want to address this with our students. We're not exactly sure how to do that. There's some really practical tools available for schools, vignettes and even curriculums available. We helped St. Clair High School pull some of those resources from online. One was from the Department of Child and Family Services in the UK, and they actually created a short 7-minute vignette on cyberbullying. Came with some case discussion questions and some role-playing type activities that they could do with the students, and they're looking at implementing that within their anti-bullying program, which should take place a couple times a year at the high school there with their 9th and 10th grade students.
How much responsibility do our local schools have, especially, we've been talking mostly about cyberbullying, so a lot of that happens outside of the classroom, outside of the walls of the school, but where does that school responsibility line lie on that? I imagine it's got to be a pretty gray area because that has an impact both in the classroom and outside the classroom.
Sure. Again, I think the first step is creating that safe culture. Like I said, that's something that St. Clair High School is beginning to walk towards. They're creating that anti-bullying program, creating the awareness. But also, the second most important thing is schools really need to be, once they're aware of that behavior, if that behavior is brought to the attention of an administrator or a teacher, they really need to respond to that immediately and take that very seriously.
Sure.
One of the first cases back in 1995 was the case of Jamie Nabozny, and this was a student that was bullied from middle and high school. Both physical threats, he was kicked, punched, beat up, assaulted several times, also verbal threats as well. Went to the building administrators at both the middle school and high school level. Those administrators did not act on that information. And actually, Jamie ended up suing the school district under the 14th Amendment right of equal protection. The courts found, and this was well documented, the courts found that the school did not act and did not provide that equal protection to Jamie. One of the financial risks to districts, and from that case, they were ordered to pay $900,000 to Jamie to that case. So nearly $1 million it cost that district because they failed to act on that information that was brought to them.
Wow, so some pretty serious implications there for both the victim and the school district.
Both financially, academically, and then of course the idea of the ultimate risk is that some of our students are dying from this behavior. So I mean, this is a very number of reasons why we want to be as proactive as we can to try and address this behavior.
Is there any symptoms that a parent, a teacher, or principal needs to be looking for in their students that they may become a victim of a bullying?
We could look at a couple of characteristics. We could look at characteristics where that might put students at more of a risk to be bullied within the school. Some of those characteristics are if a student, just part of their personality is to be very passive or to be socially withdrawn or more isolated. We also see, too, students that have a difficult time recognizing social cues. Students, an example of an autistic student I was working with recently, autistic students and students that kind of fall on that autistic spectrum have a difficult time recognizing social cues. So the student that we were working with did a lot of shouting out, yelling during class periods, and his classmates would often laugh and snicker and kind of roll their eyes. Those are behaviors that you and I might very easily pick up on, but due to that disability, and we see this specifically with autism, but that inability to recognize those social cues and see that eye rolling and the laughing and the snickering by the other students really places that particular student or that type of personality at risk for being pointed out or being made fun of or being bullied by his classmates. And of course, there's a number of risk factors we could look at if students are being bullied, things that we might see in students as warning signs.
And I'm sure parents, too, can see changes in behavior, changes in habits or routines that they may do that may also be signals that we should be aware of.
Absolutely. I mean, we can see that increase in absenteeism, missing more days of school, or reporting to the parents that they want to stay home, they're feeling sick. If that's more often than they typically see, that change of behavior, as you pointed out. A reduction in grades, so A and B students, C's, D's, E's, so there's a change in grades. We're seeing more of those depressed symptoms, more of those anxious symptoms. There's a number of things that we could look at that could possibly be signs that their son or daughter is being bullied.
Have you come up with any signs or anything of a student who may develop as become a bully? Or are there any traits of people that have been identified as the bullier, so to speak, that they would exhibit that other students may not?
I think one of the things that's surprised me the most in looking at the most current research, we often find that a lot of our the actual bullies in school are very popular individuals, popular with both the staff and popular with their friends and their peers within that building as well. Bullying very typically is something that flies under the radar, so to speak. These individuals are very good or very adept at making these threats or making these manipulations without being recognized by teachers and peers. So I think that's one thing that's surprised me more than some of the warning signs, is that popular, that kind of that standout figure is often times bullies within our
Yeah, because you would think it'd just be the opposite, the student trying to get attention rather than a student who has the attention.
Right, and one of the characteristics or one of the definitions of bullying is really that difference in power or that difference in status. I mean, it's an intentional behavior involving threats or hostility towards another individual. Sure. But that defining characteristic is that difference in power, and that could be a popular student bullying a less popular student. You could look at differences in physical size. So that difference in status or power, and again, we often see that with some of the more popular vocal individuals in the building.
I know we only have a couple of minutes left. Let's focus a little bit on the parents. What should they do if they start noticing some of the signs you just mentioned in their student, or maybe the student said, hey mom, this has been going on for a while. What should parents do? What recourse do the parents have?
I think the first thing that parents want to do, and again, this goes back to buildings being proactive, making it safe to talk with parents and work with parents. But I think one of the first things the parents need to do is report that behavior immediately. Just like we would encourage our buildings to act on that information immediately, we would ask that the parents report that to the school building immediately and try and work with that staff and follow up on a regular basis with that report. In terms of cyberbullying, it would never hurt to contact the authorities as well. I mean, this violates a lot of legal precedents by having this information online and making these threats. So often law enforcement can be helpful in contacting as well. And I think it gets back to your point of we need to really be working together as a community, not only to increase awareness, but once we have that level of awareness, how do we intervene when this it is an issue that's brought to us?
Do you find the community is pretty open to trying to address this subject and working together from various angles, whether it's from the church angle or from other social groups or people that work with kids type of thing?
Very much so. One of our local pastors in the St. Clair district there is not only working with the high school, but working with parents in that community to bring in anti-bullying campaigns. Community mental health here in St. Clair County is also very active in terms of they have a suicide prevention task force. They've made themselves available to not only work with the schools, but help present that information as well. So I think there's a number of agencies that are trying to work to address the issue.
Do you have any resources that parents can access or even teachers can access online or by contacting your office that would be helpful in this?
Yeah, I would say the individual strategies that building and parents could use certainly can access my office at SCCCRESA. I'm available for that. One thing that I would really encourage parents to do, we've seen the anti-bullying legislation die in committee for several years now. I would encourage parents, you can go online and even Google who's my senator in Michigan, who's my congressman in Michigan, and then you can just put in your zip code and it'll bring up your representatives in the legislature. I would really encourage parents to send emails, write a letter, make a phone call to their local representative and let them know that they're in favor of the anti-bullying legislation. I don't know that we'll see that much of a difference until this is put into law, until we're really actively working at that level to prevent the tragedies that come from bullying.
Okay. Any last minute advice you'd like to give to our kids or to parents regarding this topic?
In terms of kind of what we opened with, being afraid to maybe address or talk about bullying, I think the best advice we could give is trying to normalize this behavior by having these open dialogues with our students and with our parents, and parents actively addressing the topic with their sons or daughters as well.
Okay, great. Well, Joe, you've given us some great information. I appreciate you taking some time. Not an easy subject to talk about, that's for sure, but definitely one that needs some communication in the community, I'm sure. We want to thank you for joining us on this edition of Dateline Schools.